Welcome to Lost Hope. My name's Bubba. I'm the gentleman with thistle brown hair, and with me is someone who is not respectable, someone who's in his ratty yellow tent out in the street. He is the person I like to call Mr. Catfish.
Oh, hello.
Hello. I've waited so long for us to be speaking so pleasantly on this podcast.
Well, it's so magnificent. It's a magnificent podcast, just as Mr. Norrell.
You're so much better at that than I am, Catfish.
Norrell. We did receive some criticism for the way we pronounce Mr. Norrell because he says Norrell. Right?
Well,
but that's boring.
I am so influenced by the character of Drawlight.
Yes.
Many times in last week's podcast, I called him Norrell instead of Norrell, just because it rolls off the tongues. It rolls the R's. It rolls off the tongues. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Lost Hope Podcast, a Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell podcast where we break down BBC One / BBC America's 7-part adaptation of the novel by Susanna Clarke. I have read the books, and I loved them. Catfish read the novel and found it
boring.
We're not going to have any spoilers in this episode as we break down the latest episode to air on BBC America.
You know why there's not going to be any spoilers for me, Bubba?
Why not?
Because I don't remember much from this book.
Okay, all right.
The very little that I remember happened, I forgot.
No.
So I'm free to speculate as to what could be coming in the future. That's what's great about me.
Okay, so we are going to be going over everything of the first 2 episodes, and we just finished Chapter 2. How is Lady Pole here on BBC?
And the answer is not good.
Nah, she's doing
good.
better.
No.
Catfish, we always start off by telling everybody what our rating out of 10 for this episode is. So we just watched Chapter 2, How is Lady Pole? What do you give this episode out of 10?
I'm going to give this episode 8 last digits on the pinky finger.
8 out of 10. That's pretty good.
8 out of 10. Yes. I and I suppose we should be honest because how you watch something it affects your experience of it. And there's a lot of talk these days about how people sort of binge watch things. And you and I saw these first 2 episodes back to back on a larger screen. And then we saw a little Q&A with the character of Mr. Norrell.
Yes, actor Eddie Marsan gave a Q&A after we watched these first 2 episodes. And he's great in the Q&A. He's great in the show.
Yeah. And I remember at the time feeling loving the first episode when we watched it, and then I felt like there was a little dip in the second episode. Mm-hmm. But watching it just separately by itself, I found it all to be interesting. Although I will say, that the part with when the lady is going to Lost Hope, some of it, I would like to see more of it. So the fact that it's kind of non-specific and dreamy, I'd like to see more of what's going on there. I'm a little confused about what's going on. I mean, I know that there's a dance every night, and that Stephen, the manservant, the ratio of hot dudes to manservants appeared to be about 6 to 1. That's a good ratio.
Yeah, a lot of women that Stephen got to dance with. There were like 5 on him at once. Heck yeah.
Ladies.
They needed some meat in that
oh boy.
Like fest. All right. All right, so Catfish, once again, it seems like you are enjoying this more than you enjoyed the book.
Absolutely. I find it to be interesting, humorous, and I thought that when we saw when we broke down the season trailer of it, and we saw this horse bit, I assumed that, like the book, nothing exciting would happen until the very end. So it's nice to see that this horse bit happened in the second episode because I found it very good.
Oh, yeah. On a big screen, it was so impressive. It was not everything in this show, I think, would you call movie quality. Some of it is dark. Some of it's supposed to kind of look fake and dreamlike. And so Lost Hope, when they go to that kind of has a, it has a fake look to it, but you kind of accept it because it's this fairy realm.
It's sort of like they sort of do that. It's kind of like, it's even when the man with the thistle-down hair shows up, there's sort of kind of a fun house feel to it.
Right. Yeah. But the stuff at Portsmouth on the beach with these sand horses, that it looks great, it feels great. The ship itself, maybe that's stuck in the water, doesn't look too real, but those sand horses are impressive.
And what's great about it too is it shows the difference, of course, because the scene before that we see at the beach. There's Mr. Norrell, right, who is, doing his magic is very rote.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, he has to do a little bogus flourish at the end to make people, because I think that's what he expects from people, whereas just naturally, Jonathan Strange magic it's very earthy. It's not intellectual. He's got to get his hands down into the sand, right, to feel it, to get connected to it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, his is more organic.
Right. I would also say that Jonathan Strange could play Vegas. Mr. Norrell, he'd have to do the close magic room at the Magic Castle. His magic needs some flourish.
Norrell would be a card counter.
Right.
But you'd hear him, you'd see his lips moving as he's counting the cards.
Okay.
10. Jack. Queen. That's
all right,
2 queens.
Catfish,
That's
now
3
for
queens.
my ranking. The first chapter, the first episode, I gave a 9 out of 10.
That's right.
This one, I'm only going to give an 8 triple P's out of 10. So 8, what I like to call triple P's out of 10.
Triple P's?
Yeah, perfectly placed peepholes. So, yeah.
Okay, excellent.
This episode had a lot of perfectly placed peepholes. I loved it. And one thing that I will definitely say, and I asked this in one of our preseason podcasts, is, does this show work better when you can kind of marathon it? And it would definitely work better without commercials. Here in the United States, there's some oddly placed commercials because they weren't building, when they were making the show, they weren't building to, here's where a commercial break will go. And so if you watch this, it just has some oddness to it. It's like, we're leaving now?
If you talk to people who are showrunners, writers, producers for American television, it's very clear that they write for the breaks.
Oh, yeah. They know.
To set it up so, okay, we want to get these people back, which is interesting because that means every 8 minutes or so, it's like a mini cliffhanger or something to sort of
You got to have some
engage.
hook to get people to not flip away.
Yeah. Now, one other thing is, we talked about maybe having we have our Magician of the Week.
Right.
And I was thinking this week, wow, we should have our Draw Light of the Week. But then I realized every week it would be Draw Light.
Right.
So I'd like to introduce a new thing, and is the
Yes.
the triple D scale.
The triple D?
Yeah. The delightful Draw Light drollness scale. So from 1 to 10, how would you characterize the deliciousness of Draw Light this week?
He's raised it up. I think that he goes to 11 this week.
He does go to 11.
Good stuff.
What's great is, not just during his dialogue, but as you pointed out, if you can watch him in the scenes he's in when he's not speaking, and he's just so engaged the whole time.
He is
and
still
expressive.
on.
Yes, exactly.
He is really great. So, guys, we're going to break down this episode. We are going to go over our Magicians of the Week.
Right.
We're going to also touch on footnotes for those of you who haven't read the novel. The novel is loaded with footnotes, and we're going to break down our podcast recap and review occasionally for footnotes. I want to
now the audience knows. Of course, again, we'd seen the first 2 episodes. Now the audience knows
why we have a bell.
Why we have a bell.
So we've got so many tweets in, and so Matt Murdoch, his first one is he goes, clearly we were talking last week about one of them is named Fearsome, and one is named Fear, and one is named Arrogance. These 2 magicians, and so he says he thinks Jonathan Strange is fearsome because Papa Strange called him weak and skittish. He also put out a prediction, Catfish. He says he predicts that Childermas, the manservant to Mr. Norrell, this is tough, is the Raven King in waiting. That's why he's pushing Norrell hard. And he says...
You mean Norrell?
Dang it, so tricky. He also says, notice the reverbed wind blowing in the background, both when the man with thistle-down hair and Norrell talk, and Vinculus talks. There's reverb on the wind blowing in the background. He really liked that. He also said he didn't give it a rating, but he said he gave it a hip hip huzzah for this episode. He loved it, and his final note was he likens John Segundus and Mr. Honeyfoot to R2D2 and C3PO of the series. That's pretty good, huh?
Wow, all right.
That's a great call.
Yeah.
We also got some other tweets in. We got one from, now Catfish, you're better pronouncing than I am. How would you pronounce that guy's name? The pierogi?
He's pierogi man.
Okay.
Because he loves pierogies.
It makes sense.
Yeah, no, pierogies are great.
And this is feedback on Twitter. What'd he say?
He says, hate to say it, but hashtag Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell was more interesting than the first 7 episodes of Season 5 Lost Hope podcast. Am I crazy?
So he's saying that the first 7 episodes of Game of Thrones Season 5 hasn't got as much going, isn't as interesting as these first couple episodes here. Do you agree, Catfish?
Ooh, I'm gonna have to disagree. I mean, you can't compare them. This is a totally new world that we're immersing ourselves in.
Yeah.
It's one huge book that there's only 7 episodes.
Right.
Even though the huge book has very little going on in it, actually.
Book lovers, you can roll your eyes as I do when Catfish says this stuff, but keep going.
You can. I'm not comparing the two because one of them is more of a sprawling story.
Right.
So there's so many things going on in Game of Thrones. You have to touch on so many things, and this is able to be a sharper thing. What are your feelings on it?
I think you got it pretty good. There are actually a lot of characters in this show, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, even though Game of Thrones has so many more.
Or Norrell.
Dang it. Drink. And so every time we pronounce it with the L, drink.
Oh my God.
So I think they're both pretty good. I would say that these 2 episodes, I've given an 8 and 9 to these first 2 of this season.
Yeah.
Where the first 7 of Game of Thrones, I think the highest I would have gotten would have been 7 maybe, or an 8 of those. So I'm not sure I even gave an 8 to one of the first.
I think you liked. There was one of the early episodes was your second episode.
Yeah.
Was your second favorite of the season.
Yeah. So it's tough call. We also got a tweet in from Maggie. Why don't you read that one, Catfish?
Oh, I read. Maggie R says, and she's at less toil 6. Oh no, see, I blew this LESETOILES 6.
Yeah,
that's fancy.
Okay.
She says at Fit and Trim. Thank you. My hashtag JSMN audiobook is not available, and I've watched each episode 3 times already.
Wow.
Your podcast is just what I'm craving. So I'm going to guess from her handle, and also from what she said, that she is watching it overseas and therefore is ahead of us because we are just reviewing episode 2, and overseas, across the pond, as they say, they are almost done with the series. They've just seen 6.
Wow, incredible. Well, thank you very much, Maggie.
We're catching up as much as we can, Maggie. We're doing this as fast as we can.
Just keep rewatching them until we catch up, Maggie. My good friend Natasha Patel, who's at La Rensoul, that's LARENSOUL on Twitter. She also kind of had a prediction, like Matt did, about Childermas and the Raven King, but her prediction says, does Mr. Norrell also use a bell? Drink.
I was waiting.
Does Mr. Norrell use the bell to induce a spell on Jonathan Strange? That's her prediction.
Oh, no, I don't know whether that's usually when someone has a question, unless it's rhetorical, like the one that was that Mr. Norrell, Mr. Norrell said that was a rhetorical question when it really wasn't.
No.
So I'm not sure this is a prediction. It's a query.
All right. We also had some great tweets from our friend Tracy. She's at Tracy 2EZ. So let me spell this out. She's at TRACEE, the number 2 EZ. That's Tracy on Twitter. And she says 10 years about when Mr. Norrell is saying how long Jonathan Strange is going to have to study. She's like, 10 years? And then she sees that Mr. Norrell is wearing this fez in his pajamas.
Yes, no, he's got, and she wants to know what's Norrell wearing.
Right.
And this is his instructor outfit that he thought he'd never be able to wear.
Right. He's like, pull it out. Childermas, get out the instructing PJs. Let's do this.
Well, I'm just hoping. I mean, there's one of two things. Either it's his instructing or that's his seduction outfit.
She also has something, and once again, because people have heard us on our Game of Thrones podcast entitled The Joffrey podcast, we have a lot of crossover tweets. And Tracy says she imagines the Citadel, which is where maesters, the kind of learned people in the Game of Thrones Song of Ice and Fire universe, go to study. She goes, I imagine it was a bit like the York Society of Magic, where they only had 4 books, and they're like, nah. In fact, I miss I have to be honest, maybe the reason why I went down from a 9 to an 8 on this episode is we're missing Dr. Foxcastle. He was so good last week.
Well, I would say this. If you, again, we love our listeners to be in dialogue with us.
Yeah.
If you can either tweet at us, or all you have to do is tweet just out there and either hashtag Lost Hope or hashtag Lost Hope Podcast.
Right.
But if you want to get it directly to us, you can hit me up at CJGman67. Bubba, what about you?
Everybody, you can reach me on Twitter. It's at FittenTrim. That's FITTENTRIM. Fit and Trim on Twitter. We love hearing from you.
Following the rules of this podcast, what's nice is that Tracy has triple E's in her handle, and you have triple T's.
Only, well, I guess they're not together, but yes, I do have 3 T's.
And hers aren't together either.
Okay. Catfish, we have rambled on long enough. Are you ready to break down Chapter 2, How is Lady Bull?
I'm ready to break it down. I've got several thoughts.
Now, Catfish...
Should I just say them all at once?
Hold on.
Before I forget them?
Hold on. Let's get to it real quick. We're going to start off with a footnote. And that is, Catfish, you always talk about how this novel is, you found it long where nothing happened. In this, the second episode, if you go by the timeline of the book, it starts in at least November 1807. That's where this blockade of Port of Brest starts.
Right.
And it goes till at least 1810, a.k.a. 3 years later, because that's when this Portsmouth ship ran aground in the novels. Now, I think in the show it's not supposed to have been that long.
Right.
But the fact that they took 3 years' worth of events from the novel and compressed it into one episode, they are trying to get this thing moving.
Smart.
So let's visit that wonderful French coast and the port of Brest, and we begin. Zut alors, merde. Je mangeais le fromage à la plage. I'm trying to say everything I learned in all those semesters I took French, which is not very much. Apologies, everybody. So here we are. It's a rainy day in northern France, and they're looking out, and it's a storm going, and here come the ships.
Like I said, what's interesting about this show, and I think I like, is that they don't lay so many things out for you. For example, here, even watching it the second time, I'm confused because the illusion is so unbelievable. I'm not sure. I think it's a bad illusion if you don't believe it, and I'm not sure exactly what kind of time they buy by having this illusion. In other words, all they do is save like a half an hour before they're like, oh my God, obviously this is not the real problem.
Well, that's another compression. In the books, the French do see this blockade. They have, many weeks of rain, and so that doesn't get them out sailing. But sure enough, maybe this is, it looks like it takes place over just one rainy afternoon, but in the books, this did take place over a long time.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, somehow you could have said... Mm-hmm. Gosh, it's been raining for 3 weeks, and I'm going to give the bad interpretation of it, and this is finally we see, here's the armada that we've been watching for 3 weeks and waiting for. But otherwise, it feels like, okay, that's a half hour wasted. Now we've got to move on.
And we weren't going to start sailing in this rainstorm anyway. So good work, English magician.
Right. Yeah, it's like too much of a good thing. You can't believe it.
What did you think of these effects of the rain ships, Catfish?
I really dug it. Obviously, it's not, made of rain, because the one thing where we see that it's actually made of rain is just from the point of view of the boat and just an outpouring down of rain. So I think the vision is nice itself, but, they save themselves some time by not really, having to do too much stuff, I think.
No, and I love it. I love how angry they are. I'm saying my only French curse words I know. Merd. But that takes us back to what I'm going to assume is Parliament, and in walks Mr. Norrell, and he is getting a hero's welcome, isn't he?
And he is, and also you see, because we're going to see it even later, you see, I think, the biggest smile that he's given so far. It's not totally effusive, but finally he's getting the recognition that he wanted.
Yeah, this is, we asked last week, listeners, tweet at us and let us know what you think. Did Mr. Norrell do this to help with the war effort, or did he do this to bring magic back to England?
Later on in this episode, he says, I wish I'd never come. I wish I'd not tried to make magic respectable.
Right.
So it's still I'm still a little confused because he does seem like the kind of hermit guy who doesn't. But from what we've seen, and maybe this is another thing you sort of have to interpret because his character doesn't seem like that, is that he does have an ego, and that's what's led him into trouble. That's what led him into trouble with Lady Poole.
Oh yeah. So they wanted the people here at Parliament, Lord Liverpool and Pole, I forget what, Sir Walter Pole, they want to see people. And so sure enough, he shows them in his magic kind of bowl mirror here, he shows them Lord Wellington, who's out on the peninsula, a.k.a. the Iberian Peninsula, when they're fighting Napoleon in all these wars, huh?
Yeah.
And so these guys, Lord Liverpool and everybody there at the Parliament, they start bringing up, boy, you know what might really be helpful is if you bring back some of our great leaders. And they pitch Admiral Nelson and William Pitt. Now, once again, if this is roughly following the same timeline of the show, and this is somewhere in the late 1807, Admiral Nelson died in 1805.
Yeah.
And then Pitt died in January of 1806. So Mr. Norrell was right. He's like, I could bring him back, but there'd be quite the stench.
There would be. And again, I quote the great Fred Gwynne from the movie Pet Sematary.
What'd he say?
Sometimes dead is better.
Sometimes dead is better. But everybody, this scene, it starts off with draw light. And once again, he says great stuff where he's like...
Draw light is super draw lighting it up in this scene.
He is. Mr. Norrell, he doesn't want to go to the war effort. He's like, I'm a poor traveler, but I can... I could put up some beacons, and this is kind of the runner through the episode. He's like, I could put up some beacons which would prevent people from being able to invade England. And you could tell that they aren't that excited about it. So Drawlight, he's trying to sell it more. He's like, he could do more rain spells.
Yeah, it's exciting. You know what's great I love about Drawlight is usually you can't be this expressive and crazy unless you're like in a kid's show, but it totally works here.
It totally works. We'll watch his face when Mr. Norrell's pitching other options.
Well, he's first like exaggerated concern, and then he's like super excited.
Yes. He is the best person in the entourage. If he had been in the movie Entourage, it would have been #1 at the box office.
Absolutely.
Instead of a box office bomb. He just sells it. And everybody loves it. But now here's an important question, Catfish, that I warned you I was going to ask. That the Parliament loves him. Lord Liverpool loves him. He's like, listen to me. You've done great things. But Mr. Norrell, his only thing he asks for doing these great things is he's like, I need your help in keeping magic respectable.
And
these
he mentions that.
These street magicians, let's get rid of them.
He mentions that over and over again. So one part of it is... We'll talk about the specific part of it, but one part of it is not attached to the street magicians. Is he talks about respectable magic, and he's warning about the Raven King,
right?
But basically, if there's anyone who has done disreputable magic, it's him.
Yeah, that is a point I definitely was going to bring up at a later scene in the show. Is that the one thing he keeps railing against? Is the one thing he did. You know, it's like, do as I say, not as I do.
Right. Well,
because he knows how much trouble it caused.
Yeah, exactly. And because we'll talk about what's happened with the man with the thistle-down hair. But I will say, throughout the episode, you can see he becomes more powerful.
Oh, yeah.
Because first he's only drawn, and it's sort of... Mr. Norrell is still in charge of where he can go and can't go, kind of.
Right.
And by the end of the episode, he is out and can be seen by everybody.
Right. That is crazy. And we'll get to it in a bit, but I guess now I just want to say it because it's on my mind so much. That final scene where there's the back and forth bidding over these books, and then suddenly Mr. Norrell looks over, and there's the man with thistledown hair. That's like an oh snap moment. I know, but it's like, oh crap.
No, that wasn't the oh crap moment for me.
What was?
The oh crap moment for me was because we've seen him before.
Oh yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So you could assume, like I did, okay, it's just Norrell who sees him. When he drops the handkerchief and Lady Arabella grabs it, you're like...
Well, she says no thank you.
She says no thank you, but she sees it. Then I was like, what the holy moly?
Holy moly is right. So,
all right, so
what about street magicians? He hates them.
But I think specifically he just wants to get rid of the one dude who scared the crap out of him.
Well, he theoretically got him out of London. Last week he got him out of London. I think it's something bigger going on. I think he hates. He especially hates Vinculus, but even before he met Vinculus, he had to really look down his nose on street magicians, and so there's something going on.
Well, and this is another a weird dichotomy. With Norrell is that he does seem distrustful. To the point of hate for other magicians, but as we see, he's so charmed by Strange that he lets him in, which is odd.
Well,
when we get to that scene, let's try and figure out why that happens.
No problem. Well, let's leave Parliament and let's go to Starcross Hall. And here is, as Triple M says, our R2D2 and C3PO.
Here they are,
Mr. Honeyfoot and John Segundus. And I kind of like these guys, even though they are breaking, or specifically, I guess Mr. Honeycutt is breaking, and Mr. John Segundus is actually fine, because they signed, or most everybody signed that sheet that said, okay, I won't do anything with magic after the York Cathedral.
Now, I know, again, we talk about Game of Thrones too much, but, we've got a lot of pairings going on road trips on Game of Thrones. I'd love to see these two guys going through the Game of Thrones world.
They wouldn't last too long, R2-D2 and C-3PO. I actually like them, and I want to talk about pairings, because there are a lot of pairings in this show. Not only is the infamous pairing of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, but we have this pairing of John Segundus and Mr. Honeyfoot.
And I'm surprised
and we
to
also
see
have,
them.
Oh, no, I completely agree.
I'm surprised to see them because...
But we also have Drawlight and LaSalle.
Right.
So, there are pairings on this show, too.
Yeah. And I'm surprised to see these guys because I kind of thought that their...
usefulness was over. Their usefulness
that's
to the story
exactly the word I was looking for. That's it. They're done. So I don't even know whether we'll see them again, whether they're going to come back later, but they're a funny group.
Okay, so they go into this Starcross Hall, which is a place they want to buy, and specifically John Segundus wants to create a school for magic, and as soon as he's in there, John Segundus can tell someone's doing magic and collapses and falls into a dream.
Which is interesting because what that lets us know is that he does have some affinity or recognition of magic.
Oh, yes,
this is the first time, because we saw him in the first episode hopelessly trying to do magic.
Well, he had bought that spell, remember, everybody? And keep that spell in the back of your mind is all I'll say. So let's go into this dream. He seems the equivalent of the blue fairy.
Well, right.
This beautiful woman, he's in this dream, he's in this vision, but once again, it's not his dream. It is the dream of Mr. Jonathan Strange, who Mr. Segundus blew it.
Well, that's what he says. He says he blew it.
He did. Come on.
How can you just blow it? He just showed up. He's there. Doesn't matter.
Listen, because how about this? Because maybe John Segundus is a magician. We know if he can tell magic's being done, there's something going on with him. He may not be able to do spells himself, but he's getting close.
Yeah.
And thank goodness he didn't sign that sheet. So out from Starcross Hall comes Jonathan Strange, his lovely wife Arabella, and his manservant Jeremy, who apparently loves any place that doesn't have open windows and snow.
Exactly. Huh? I'm surprised he still has all the digits on his fingers. Speaking of fingers,
and so this Starcross Hall, it had stones that came from the Raven King's castle. We find out. And it's a very magical place. And like most places with magic, it seems overgrown with weeds and with roots.
And once again, we're reinforced at this point. We really don't need to know anymore. But I guess this is good to know that basically, Strange is he's like groping around in the dark. He's got an affinity for it, but he doesn't know exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, and
he's a prodigy as opposed to someone who studied for years and years and years. Yeah,
that's going to be a big point, once again, foreshadowing going forward about how Jonathan Strange, his line coming up is about, the magic is almost frustrating him. He's like, I cannot control the magic that I do. That is a bad sign for him to say, considering Mr. Norrell also couldn't control the magic he did with Lady Pole. So it's like, we got two guys doing magic and neither of them can control it. We're screwed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's dangerous. It's like with dynamite.
So Jonathan Strange points out that he hasn't done it all by just happenstance. He's got one book. His wife bought him a book, and it's called A Child's History of the Raven King. It's a new book. It was printed in 1807. But he's like, yeah, my wife bought me a book. Yay! Now, what do you think? She doesn't really say too much about it. But what do you think Arabella Strange. What do you think she always, is she happy she got what she wanted? She wanted her husband her husband or fiance, I guess back then, to have a profession. Right. Now he's got a profession. Is she happier, or is she be careful what you wish for here?
Well, I think up to this point she's happy. Even when he leaves the war, she doesn't feel horrible. I think she's proud of him at this point, because even though she loved him because she saw something more in him, he seems like a really cool guy. But it wasn't. It's nice to see someone you care about have a passion, and finally he's got a passion for something, and he's really achieving it. And like she says later on, if this had been before you were involved in magic, you definitely would have noticed if there was a new hot lady around the house.
He'd also be drinking a lot more.
Right.
Maybe he'd be more fun to hang with. He'd be happy people entered his dreams. He'd be like, "Hey, dude, I saw you in my dream, dude.
Let's do this."
So now there's some important bit of knowledge right here, kind of a get ready for it footnote. Now the first chapter, the first episode was entitled "The Friends of English Magic," but the show never explained what that was. And here, right in this beginning scene in Staircross Hall, we find out that good old Mr. LaSalle, Henry LaSalle, one of the toadies who hang out with Mr. Norrell, he's created a pamphlet entitled "The Friends of English Magic," and you see Jonathan Strange has read it, and he's like, "Ugh, this pap," I guess is the best way.
Right.
And he doesn't. When Mr. Honeyfoot and Segundus say, "Hey, you should go talk to Mr. Norrell," he's like, he's no friend of English magic. I'm pretty much the friend of English booksellers, and that's it.
Right, because as we know, he found out.
Right.
We don't see it, but he found out, as Segundus found out, there's you can't get your hands on books of magic.
Right. No. But they do seem to talk him into it. They do think to talk. They say, "Hey, back in the time of the Raven King," you know what? That should be another time you drink. Anytime anybody mentions the old Raven King. Well, they said magicians would have apprentices, and he goes, now, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell.
Well, now
that sounds very well.
That's the thing. I think I used to study with a person who was like, it's always strange for whatever actor needs to say the title of the movie or the show that you're in.
Right.
Okay? So that happens. Two important titles are mentioned in this episode.
Yeah.
And one of them, first of all, is what Mr. Honeyfoot says is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell.
Right.
Right? And so he has to drink.
I think Honeyfoot's had a couple of drinks. Look at that guy.
Now, this is what I don't understand. I know that sometimes you save the best for last, but when it comes to billing, isn't the most important person first? I don't know why, both in the book and also here, that Jonathan Strange comes first. First of all, in the book, we're introduced to Mr. Norrell first.
That's correct. We don't meet Jonathan Strange he's mentioned in footnotes and other things, but it's pretty much, the book is divided into 3 sections, and the first section is called Mr. Norrell, and it's all about him. It's all about him, nobody else. And then the second section is titled Jonathan Strange, and we don't meet him until, this is a 1,000-page book. You wouldn't meet him until 333 pages in.
Right.
You didn't think Honeyfoot should suddenly say, you know what sounds even better than Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell is Jonathan Strange, Mr. Norrell, and Mr. Honeyfoot. Yeah.
No, he'd put Honeyfoot first.
All right, he'd go, you know what sounds better? Honeyfoot and friends. Honeyfoot and acquaintances.
Honeyfoot and 2 schmucks.
So, they're going to open up their magical school here, we can assume. And once again, Honeyfoot says it again, consider what 2 magicians could do. And we leave that, we go back to Sir Walter Pole's house, where there's a dinner party. And of course, who is the loudest at the dinner party? My boy, Drawlight.
Drawlight's making some jokes.
Right. And so we see he is sitting next to Lady Pole, and Lady Pole's talking about how nowadays in the papers, every time you read about somebody doing magic all the time. Mr. LaSalle was the first to put it down. He's like, we investigate it. Nobody does magic. Nobody but Mr. Norrell. And this is another, Drawlight. I could do a whole show on Drawlight. He's just so good. So what is really good is he's like, nobody can do magic. And he goes, the wonderful things that Mr. Norrell did, he had to spend years of study reading books. He's saying it like, reading books, how crazy.
Horrible it is.
This poor man, the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Right, and then they talk about there's no one can do magic except for Mr. Norrell.
Right. could you get away with life as Drawlight? Like, could you go to a dinner party and be Drawlight Catfish for a night? Wouldn't that be awesome?
I mean, I think that'd be fun, but after a while, you'd come home, you take off your wig, you'd look yourself in the mirror, and it's like, oh, what am I doing with my life?
You think if there was a spin-off with Drawlight, that's what he'd be doing to end all these parties?
He's like the sad clown afterwards.
I've wasted my life. Or I've wasted my life.
Well, what's funny is, and we see later on, the two of them, just hanging around, waiting outside of Norrell's room. So what I'm trying to figure out is, number one, what these two dudes were doing before. Who were they pimping up before, right?
It doesn't matter.
Were they just sitting outside of Vinculus's tent? Mr. Vinculus!
Maybe.
And then number two, like, how are they making money off this dude except for that crappy...
Hey, you want to know what's happening with Mr. Norrell? You got to buy the Friends of English Magic in bookstores and newsstands now.
All right.
So Lady Pole, she hasn't yet begun to hate Mr. Norrell. She's like, doing nothing but reading books alone in your study. You must be very lonely. Mr. Norrell, he waves it off. He's like, you're not lonely when you have a book. Now, while all this is going on, a servant is helping Mr. Norrell, and right over his shoulder, and it's a blink and you miss it, he looks up in the mirror and he sees who, Catfish? The gentleman with thistle-down hair, and he spills something onto Mr. Norrell's lap. Ouch. How painful. So... It would
be painful, but it doesn't really seem to need anything below the waist.
You don't want to get brushed down there?
He's not interested in the ladies.
Oh, come on.
So then we get a little, it's a...
What do you call this room? The servants? It's even a hallway almost.
It is. This is, you see this in, the upstairs, downstairs, or...
Downton Abbey.
Downton Abbey, right. This is sort of the staging area, I guess, for things to happen.
Right, and the Stephen Black, the manservant here to the Poles, he's cleaning up Mr. Norrell, and he's mentioning that the person who spilled this thing, he's a country folk, and everybody here seems to think that this place is haunted. Uh-oh.
Yeah. Well, if a place is haunted, I don't want to get into it too much. Yeah. If you think a place is haunted, perhaps you should dust all the bells.
Right. So we come back to the dinner.
And Lady Pole wants to dance.
Yeah,
she's
Lady
ready
Pole
to dance.
wants to dance. Yeah. And we focus on Mr. Norrell's face, and he's like, not good. Okay? And then we see this thing that you say you wanted more of, and that's Lady Pole in bed, and we can see she's having a night.
Why did I say I wanted that?
You wanted Lady Pole in bed. Whoops.
I'm not sure I said that.
Mrs. Catfish, pretend I didn't say it like that.
It's Ms. Catfish.
Oh, Ms. Okay, so she has visions of what happened to her the night before.
Now,
and
again,
she's really disturbed.
If I hadn't read the book and known, I wouldn't know that, they don't lay it out so much. You think it could just be a dream. Right. It's not clear, I think, until the whole end of the episode
that this isn't a dream. This is
not a dream, that, like, every night she's stuck doing this dancing.
Yeah, and that would be, you would go mad from lack of sleep. Forget the fact that it's in a fairy land and you're having to dance all night. I mean, that would just drive you nuts. She comes down, Sir Walter Pole is having breakfast with her, and he sees her missing finger. He's like, do you want a glove? She's like, no. And she has really had a 180. Last night, she's like, I want to dance. And now she's like, I don't want to dance, and I hate these bells. The bells start ringing. And he can tell something's wrong with his wife. He loves his wife. Let's give it up.
He does. And then he's like, let's go do some more dancing like you love. And she's like, screw that. I'm done with dancing.
You know what? Women just, 1 minute they want this, 1 minute the next. Ladies are so tough.
They are, really.
Okay, so let's jump forward and... Now we'll just edit this part. Commercials. Isn't that an odd place to have a commercial, though? There's almost no better place to have.
That's a good place to have a commercial. You got to do it cut between scenes.
Okay, well, you say that, but then we see. Well, I guess it kind of works. So she has had a change of heart, and so what happens? We cut to Mr. Norrell coming back to the Poles.
Or Norrell.
Dang it! Drink, Mr. Norrell. But you know what? Maybe I'm a Drawlight. Maybe I like saying it. And so they come into the Poles' waiting room, and this is we've been in this room many times, and every time we're in this room, Lady Pole is not doing well, is she, Catfish? First time she came in, she had consumption.
She perhaps should not be
coughing,
in this room.
And so Sir Walter Pole has brought Mr. Norrell to her, and she's just not doing well. She's moved to a different couch, which is nice, but otherwise she is not doing well. And she's trying to tell him a story, and it's gibberish.
This was not so clear to me.
No.
I don't even know if it would be clear maybe at the end of the second one. You still kind of need to puzzle it out that for somehow, magically, she's stopped from telling the true story. So she just goes on and
rambles, nonsense.
Yeah.
I love the sound effect in this as she's talking and trying to tell what has happened to her every night. And instead, she suddenly spits out nothingness, you hear, as very lightly in the background. And this brings me up to another footnote. So as part of this rambling,
that's good because you rang the bell.
I did.
And so a footnote is an order.
So she was talking about a guy called John Hollyshoes, and sure enough, John Hollyshoes is the name by which Christians refer to a fairy prince mentioned by Dr. Martin Pale. Dr. Martin Pale was one of the people that Mr. Norrell mentioned at the beginning of things. Dr. Pale was the last Orite magician to travel willingly into fairy. And so John Hollyshoes is a fairy prince.
Well, gee, so she was able to tell them something if only they paid any sort of attention whatsoever.
Well, theoretically, Mr. Norrell would have heard of these stories. He has all the magic books. Maybe if she says, blah, 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 this guy John Hollyshoes, nobody else would know what she's talking about.
Well, it's clear to me, and this is going to happen very shortly,
Yeah.
It's clear to me that even though Norrell says, oh, there's no help for her, she's just kind of crazy, that he knows what's going, that he knows something he did was wrong.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't know what it is yet, and he's going to get to the bottom of it, sort of.
But this, I honestly think that Mr. Norrell, here we're in the second episode, the second chapter of this miniseries, and he starts doing some really shady, really terrible things. Like when he goes to Sir Walter, and he's like, there's nothing I can do. Magic can't cure madness. That is so kind of...
Well, what's crazy is...
I mean, you don't want to give hope to the guy.
I would have said, okay, look, I mean, maybe I asked for it because I wanted you to bring her back.
Yeah.
But clearly if someone dies and you bring them back and they're not acting right, it's not because of something else.
No.
It's because they were dead. Right. And they're not dead. They were on the other side for a while.
But maybe once...
Because sometimes dead is better.
Thank you, Fred. But perhaps this is part where, once again, by condensing such a long book, you don't realize that many months have passed between, hey, I brought her back, and just now, she's been able to think it was a dream, and now finally, several months later, she's gone completely cuckoo.
Right. No, I think they do bring that up in the book, but I think they make it clear enough here that, if you had bad dreams and felt like you were getting no rest like 3 nights in a row, I'd be ready. It wouldn't take months. I'd be ready. After 3 nights...
He should have a spell for NyQuil. All right, so Mr. Norrell, he knows something's wrong. He lights a candle. We see the candle flicker. We hear that
creak. I love that.
He looks in the mirror, and who does he see? But it's the gentleman with thistle-down hair. And the gentleman...
He's pissed.
He is pissed. And as crazy as it sounds, I kind of agree with him. He's like, you know what? You keep bringing me here, because Mr. Norrell's like, I want you to go and stay in Fairyland. And the gentleman's like, well, that's where I was going the first time you summoned me.
Thanks
if you hadn't, none of this... Yeah. He's dropping a bruh.
Yeah, bruh.
But then here's my second thing that I think Mr. Norrell has really just dropped the ball, where the gentleman with thistle-down hair, he's like, if you really cared about Lady Pole's happiness...
And he says, I don't.
Yeah, I don't care about her happiness. That is so stone cold.
Yeah.
Now, I suppose if you want to be on Mr. Norrell's side, you're like, well, she was going to be dead. I brought her back to life. If she's unhappy, but at least she's unhappy alive.
No, this is what I'm saying.
But this is stone cold.
Because
he's like, her husband's my champion. You got to cheer Walter Pole up.
Right, and again, no, not even a spoiler alert, but I felt different in the books about these guys.
Yeah.
I had more sympathy for Norrell in the books than I do in the show.
Well, he's done something really terrible. It's that thing we were talking about before. He doesn't want magic to be disrespectable. He wants it to be respectable. He doesn't want to deal with fairies.
Right.
And yet he's the one who did it. He did it because he thought he had no other choice, and he thought this could work out for him. But just like Jonathan Strange can't control his magic, we're seeing that Mr. Norrell, oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah, no, he doesn't care. And then he finds out that when you make a deal with the devil or the man with the thistle-down hair, you have to be very precise in what you say. Half her life,
right?
You got to be clear. It's the back half of her life.
Now, do you want to talk about? We talk about how Eddie Marsan is so great as Mr. Norrell, but I want to give it out for Mark Warren. I think this costume could look so ridiculous. It could look like Sting in Dude and all this stuff. But he is able, with the sound effects and with this kind of funhouse mirror look that they do to his scenes, I think he's actually made this thing that could come off as silly and preposterous. He's made it menacing, don't you think? He's great.
Again, I always think that if you are the bad guy, rather than chew the scenery, I think this is the way to go, is to be more kind of quietly menacing.
Oh, yeah.
Rather than, lots of yelling, etc.
Well, in the books, and I saw this on a review of this show, in the books, the one thing about the gentleman with thistle-down hair, and maybe you get it here on the show, but you definitely get it in the books, is they don't even consider what they're doing bad. It's like, this is the way it is. I'm inviting her to a ball. This is great. And it's almost scary evil because they have no logic. They don't see the world the way we do.
Right, exactly.
And so
and that's probably even more menacing, right? Because they don't even care. They're not even recognizing in other words, they don't recognize, humans as somebody. They're more like pets, so they don't.
Right.
They don't think of them as people that need to be. They need to consider their feelings or whatever. They just use them.
No, but I think that's a great point for when we come up and when the gentleman brings the manservant Stephen Black into his realm. It's like he thinks he's treating him great. He's like, oh, look what I'm inviting you to a party. I'm doing this. Oh, this is great. Don't you love it? And because he doesn't consider it all.
Yeah.
So Mr. Norrell blows out the candle.
Fraidy cat.
And he gives these looks, and he's like, thank God he's gone.
What did I do?
And so here we are, Catfish. This is not going to be a footnote, but everybody, yes, we bought this bell because we sure enough are taken back to the Pole household. And they have all these bells, and all these bells look identical. But then there is one.
They look really fine. And then there's one. It's funny. I think their whole idea is, look, we're not going to clean the room, so let's not bother cleaning the bell either.
Oh, do you think that's what it is? Or do you think this extra bell just suddenly appeared and it's like...
No. The bell was there the whole time because it goes to a room.
Probably up in an attic or something.
Room? No, I think that's a real room. So Steven's a little
freaked out. It may be a real room, but where it leads to is not where the real room leads to.
Okay.
You open this door, and then suddenly Stephen is called into Lost Hope, I believe, because look, this room has all the roots and weeds in it, like I said, like any magical place does.
Right. I just thought, so that's probably what's going on. I thought, just like the bell, the room was not taken very good care of.
Man, the Poles really let this.
This one.
This is a fixer-upper, folks. It's.
You want to be in this room? We call it the tree room.
We show it to prospective buyers like this, so they can kind of imagine what they would do with it, other than this.
All right. So the man with the thistle-down hair is. He's a little persnickety. He's like, I'm calling, and nobody comes.
Nobody comes to this room. What's
going on? And then
he
mentions, this is the first time, by the way, that he mentions it.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, remember that the name of something was mentioned twice. First it was Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and then the man with the thistle-down hair. He has the great burden of announcing the name of this podcast.
Lost Hope.
Lost Hope.
Isn't that a great name?
So it's time for him to drink.
A drink. And so we later find out that Lost Hope he refers to as the finest of his castles.
Great, yes, and it's got such a cheerful name. You want to go.
So Stephen gives him really wonderful service. Have you ever had a nice shave like this, where then they put the hot towel on you? I've only done it once. This is nice, but I think Stephen does it better than the place I went.
I just did it on Tuesday.
Oh, really?
I did. You know what's funny is and I think why you don't do it very often is because even though it's quite pampering, it's not like you do it and then you don't have to go a week without shaving. It's barely better than just a regular shave.
Yeah, sometimes I find it's not even as close as my regular blade is. But I did love the hot towels. I've only done it once.
The hot towels are good.
And so once again,
now this is
the
what
gentleman.
I don't understand.
Well,
he
you
invites
go
him,
in, yeah.
right? And I'm trying to figure out at what point does Stephen get suckered into this world? Was it said when he says, "As your reward, you can come," and then Stephen says, "Yes"? Is that when the deal is coming?
Well, I'm not even sure. He says, "As my gift, I invite you to join us at our ball tonight.
Right.
Do you accept?" And this is the trouble. He says something like, "Thank you, sir." That's all he said, and he is screwed.
And then he says the bargain is done. So what we see at first is, which is
terrible.
interesting, is that, like I said, we've got really gathering power by the man with the thistle-down hair. At first, he can only be called by Mr. Norrell, and in this episode, he calls him, and he gets upset, and then he just shows up at Lady Pole's house and suckers somebody else into his realm.
All right. Would you love to sucker people in like this? I would.
Absolutely.
Actually,
I'm not sure I'd do it for dancing. I would be like, I'd like you to invite you to clean my house. Would you like to clean my house?
Yes. And he goes, I mistook you for a servant. And so he also says, I'd like you to bring me the my little box over there. There's something I'd want someone to wear.
Yeah.
And of course, it's the rest of Lady Emma Pole's finger. Ouch.
Yeah, it's the finger box.
Oh, it's awkward. And so the next thing you know, Stephen Black himself is having these dreams, which he can't recall, just of dancing and dancing and dancing. And he's out cold.
Yeah, he's out. And then he gets a kind of rudely awakening, and he doesn't even know, right? Because it's when he tries to get up, he's like, I feel like I've been dancing all night, and he's not being sarcastic or whatever. Again, it's like...
Yeah. In the early stages of Lost Hope, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Consult your doctor if you're at stage 4.
So basically,
everybody else is like, peace out. This place is creepy. I'm leaving.
Bumpkin number 1 says later to this, and then Stephen's like, all right, well, Bumpkin number 2, won't you? And then Bumpkin number 1 is like, no, Bumpkin number 2 is going too. He doesn't even let Bumpkin number 2 talk. He protects Bumpkin number 2, grabs him by the arm, get away.
No. He's going back to Hampshire, sir, to look after his uncle's chickens. Boy, would you
I'd rather deal with chickens than this horse shit.
And that's where we have another commercial. Do you like this commercial break?
Oh, no.
Where everybody's
absolutely.
leaving. Okay.
No, the only thing I don't like about the commercial breaks is that the commercial breaks don't seem so odd when you're like watching The Big Bang Theory. When you're watching something from, that's set in the 1800s and then all of a sudden it's a car commercial.
Right.
It's a little jarring.
It is a bit jarring. Then we jump after the commercial to the Stranges. They have taken that advice and they've moved to the London house. And this is actually the Strange London house. We find out that Jonathan Strange
Not in an odd way.
No, right.
It's Jonathan Strange's
the
London
family
house.
Strange house. And
Right.
we find out that his mother used to bring him here and he assumes to escape his father. Now, what a cold thing to say about his cold...
Especially on Father's Day.
Right. Shameful. And so he's pretty nervous. He's like, oh, how do I look? Got the big job interview, honey. What do you think? But his wife comes with him to the job interview. Have you ever brought a significant other to a job interview there, Catfish?
No.
She comes with him all the time. Later, Sir Walter Pole grabs him. It's like, hey, we need your help. And he's like, honey, come on.
Well, although she doesn't show up for the horsey bit, I don't believe.
No.
She's still, because they get awoken
She
from
lets
bed
her,
at that
he
point.
lets him
yes.
sleep. And so, draw light. I was joking as we were watching the episode. They don't allow 8 minutes in the show to go out without any draw light. So Jonathan,
Would you?
No. So Jonathan Strange shows up in Mr. Norrell's new library, London Library here at Hanover Square, and LaSalle's and Drawlight, they are talking trash. LaSalle's like, have you read my periodical, The Friends of English Magic? I'm the editor. Perhaps this is what inspired you to become a magician, Mr.
Right,
Strange.
and he's like, I did read this bucket of shit.
Wait, what? Yeah,
Strange is great in this scene. He's like, yeah, this is amazing.
He even says, I'd never heard of Mr. Norrell before.
Now,
Ouch.
Again, what's interesting here is, even though Mr. Norrell is... it seems like he's against other magic and other magicians. He's heard from Vinculus. He's like, what, another magician? No, oh my God. And he should be forewarned. This is another mistake that he makes because everyone else is pushing him out. All he would need to say is nothing.
Right.
And Strange would have been booted out
And shown the
on
door.
his butt.
But hold on, you say that, and Childermass kind of backs up his man. So Norrell says, I'd like to see a trick.
Well,
and Childermass...
Well, right, Childermass does back him up, but it's Norrell who starts it off.
Oh, that's absolutely correct. Now, did you notice, Catfish, what Childermass pulls out of his pockets as this scene is going on?
I did. When you said, do you see what Childermass pulled out of his pocket while this is going on?
Is the cards of Marseille? Is that what we believe?
Yes.
And so... Jonathan Strange, he's excited. He's like, oh, I can't wait. This is...
Jonathan Strange
is like, oh, I can't wait. This is a spell I created myself. So he takes this pamphlet, The Friends of English Magic, and he does a trick with it. And this is, you were talking about Mr. Norrell smiling. This might be the first real smile we see.
My God.
And it's a great moment.
First Christmas morning.
It's a great moment in it. Don't you think so? This is a great moment where Mr. Norrell comes up and he's hesitant. He's crazy. And you slowly see this smile creep over his face. He's like,
I'm telling you.
Oh, man, that's cool.
He's like a little boy.
He is. This is cool. Childermass, come look at this cool thing. Oh, this is so awesome. I've never heard of
such magic. Oh, this is not recorded, sir. Oh, look at this. Oh, my.
Now, Drawlight, he's not going to fall for this. He's like, is it a different color? It doesn't look that interesting. And so, sure enough, he's told to pick it up, but he can't pick it up. Jonathan Strange hates the Friends of English Magic so much, he stuck it in the mirror, and he can't get it out.
Quick question here.
Yeah.
Because you think they were just doing it to fool us? Because I've never known Mr. Norrell to pick up things super quickly. How did he know what the heck was going on?
He could tell. He could tell what was going on. And this, I think, is really an interesting little thing that happens right here.
Right.
They're like, how did you do it? And Jonathan Strange is like, I don't really know.
Right.
He's like, I don't know how to do it. In fact, I don't know how to get it back. Once again, neither of these magicians are really in control of this magic. They are unleashing stuff that they don't know how to control, and that is trouble.
Well, but there is a huge difference.
What is that?
There's a huge difference. Again, in that Mr. Norrell knew what he was getting into.
Yeah, okay.
He can't do anything unless it's explicitly laid out.
Right.
And he knows the dangers of what he's doing. Okay, so basically, he makes a conscious decision to do something bad, whereas Jonathan Strange is somebody who has so much natural talent, but is not aware of the danger he could cause.
He's like, cause.
Yeah.
Well, it's like playing with fire if you don't know what fire can do.
It's funny. I was thinking exactly of the book/movie Firestarter.
Stephen King, great author, everybody. Yes. So. This is, they kind of have a connection. Not only did Mr. Norrell smile, but when Jonathan Strange is describing how he does magic.
Oh, yeah, right. He's like, it just kind of comes to me. It's like hearing music. I know the next note. And don't you know how that's like? And Norrell's like, oh, no. Of course I know.
Of course,
yeah.
No, it wasn't me having to study for decades, you jerk.
Right. I have to memorize it word by word, letter by letter.
And an important thing happens. Then it is immediately cuts from this growing friendship to we finding out that, guess what? You're going to be an apprentice for 10 years.
Oh, my God. Amazing. When he's like, and we can't even cover that much. But again, this is where we see him happy. Mr. Norrell is in his great instructor PJs.
Right, with the instructor fez. I love it.
Exactly.
But very importantly, everybody, my boy Drawlight and his buddy LaSalle's are now no longer in the library.
They're
cut
on
the outside.
Right. And the other thing is, we have to kind of watch this because they have hitched their wagon to Norrell.
Right.
They never make a conscious decision, why don't we kind of one-on-one? There's two of us and two of them. I would have said, if it was you and me, Bubba,
right.
I would have said, all right, I'll shadow one of them, you shadow the other. That way we'll still kind of be, no matter who is the ascending star, we'll be with them. But they make their decision. They've made their bed with Mr. Norrell.
Do you think they could tell just from how Jonathan Strange treated them when they first met him that, hey, Mr. Norrell we can kind of get away with. Jonathan Strange may not be that easy to kind of ride his coattails.
It could be also, it's clear even that Jonathan Strange, has money.
Yeah.
And I guess Mr. Norrell has money too, but he doesn't feel like he has that sense of well, it's a self-importance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether Jonathan Strange would have put up with the kind of stuff that Norrell put up with.
Right. No, I completely agree. Now,
Still, I would have tried to suck up. I would have tried to suck up to Strange. Because you know why?
Why?
Because I am like Jonathan Strange.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of ethereal and crazy, and I just
Very
do
much
whatever.
so, yeah.
And you're like Mr. Norrell, where you're reading your book with your fez on. But I also feel like you're the thistle-down hair because you're creepy with the ladies.
We'll get to that in a bit. Catfish, we've gone over halfway through this episode, and we come to my first nominee for Magician of the Week.
Oh, okay. My Magicians of the Week have already disappeared.
Oh, no. All right. Well, my first nominee is Drawlight. Once again, I'm nominating Drawlight. He is through a door, and yet through magic, he can see what's happening on the other side of this door. Do you like that?
That is magical.
Do you like that? He's able to hear and see, even though he's behind this solid wood door.
Wow, that is magical.
My number one nominee for Magician of the Week is Drawlight.
Excellent.
And so in this first teaching session, we see that Jonathan Strange is already bringing up the Raven King. And Mr. Norrell, he is having none of it, Ken.
Again, it's all about the horseshit of like respectable magic. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why. It seemed to have, he talked about kind of respectable magic before he even made that deal with the man with the thistle-down hair.
Yeah.
So somehow he's gotten this in his head about respectable magic, and I don't know where his bitterness comes from about the Raven King. But there's a great little bit about...
There's a gag. Oh, it's
the
so
gag
good.
About like, okay, here's the book. You want me to read it, right? So let go of the book.
Nah, that's okay. It's kind of like when somebody wants you to watch something on their iPhone, but they won't hand you their iPhone. You're like, I got too many embarrassing texts. I won't let you hold my iPhone, but look at it if that's okay.
Now see, and now they say draw light and bro say we have to do something about this friendship. So again, rather than try to like hook up with both, they are going to try to do something because they want to be on the in and they feel out. They're on the outside.
Oh, yeah.
He never put on a fez when they were around.
No. They realize that Mr. Norrell likes somebody already better than them.
Yeah.
Like maybe he was the best, that he liked them the best because they would just say yes to him.
Well, not just that, but they were the one who kind of provided the entree. And I believe that's part of the reason why they're sticking around to remind him, hey, if not for us, you'd be out.
For sure. And they're moving in big circles now.
Yeah.
LaSalle and Drawlight are.
This is good. That's maybe another reason why they're hanging around. But there's another funny bit here where he's like, "Hey, here's this book that you refer."
Yeah, about fairy servants.
Yeah.
Where do we learn about that? He's like, no, we don't learn.
No, we don't. No. It's like I don't have that book. You says you have it right here. That's a mistake. You're clearly I don't know what you.
Right, and then he's like, it's over. That's the lesson for today. Enough is enough. And we leave these scenes of kind of light comedy, let's say, Drawlight and LaSalle trying to listen in.
Yeah.
And we leave it and we go to Lady Pole. How is Lady Pole? She's doing terribly.
Not good.
She is trying to break mirrors. She says she is called every night with the ringing of the bells. I want to say the bells call her to dance and she must go through the mirrors. So suddenly she throws something and breaks a big mirror in this house. She's just rough, and nobody can understand it. Certainly not her husband. And her husband, maybe this is true of that time period, but it's a bit terrible. He kind of just keeps locking her away. He's like, honey, you're going nuts. Go to bed. And she's like, I don't want to go to bed. This is rough.
It's only this time period, huh? I still do that sometimes with Ms. Catfish.
Oh, boy.
She's like, I'm going crazy right now. I'm like, all right, to your room.
Edit. And so the little cobwebbed bell rings, and Stephen is brought out to that room again. But now we can see the room is brought all the way. So now
finally, this is the first time we're seeing exactly what's going on.
Oh, yeah. Stephen is brought out. He's got his little dustpan and his broom. And who shows up but the nobleman, the man with thistle-down hair who refers to Stephen as noble. He even says, look at you. You're destined to be a king. And Catfish, what was one of Vinculus's prophecies last week?
Tell me.
He said, the nameless slave shall be a king in a strange land. And sure enough, now the gentleman with thistle-down hair says the exact same thing.
Oh, and we see the dustpan and the broom have turned into a scepter and one of those fancy things that a pope used to hold. Right. It's like a little egg with a cross on it.
It looks like the holy hand grenade, if you're familiar with Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
It is.
And so we see that
You shall not go to 4.
unless right. 5 is well out.
Way out.
So the man with thistle-down hair, he is steadfast. Stephen, I think right now tries to be a good guy. He's like, maybe this agreement you had with Lady Pole, and the gentleman cuts him out. The gentleman stops him immediately.
He's just dazed, yeah.
Right. And so we see the grounds of Lost Hope. There's looks like a pirate pirate ship there. We have bones and skeletons in the front yard. The castle itself looks like a ruin. And inside, we have those trees. We have those weeds. We have those vines and the roots.
And it is a party.
Hey, you best come dressed to impress.
Yeah. Yeah, and then...
have you ever been invited to a party like this, Catfish? You need to host one. This way, you got a tree just like this. We could all dance around. This is awesome.
That is so true. I am going to a benefit later on with later on in July with a fancy like this. I hope it's as fancy as this.
Now, these people,
Footnote.
the people dancing here in Lost Hope, some are human slaves who've been captured and stolen away, and some are other fairy servants. And so all of them look like extras in a Michael Jackson video. You know what I mean? They all look made up.
Nice.
And Stephen...
Nice. It's the Rock Me Amadeus video.
Oh, it is. Who sang Rock Me Amadeus, Catfish? Who was that? Who was that guy? He was so good.
Falco?
No, was it Falco?
I want to say it was Falco.
Might have been Falco.
What do I get if I get it right? If I say
you'll
it was
get
Falco.
whatever BBC America sends us. BBC America.
No, I promise BBC America.
We're gonna give
that away. I will give that so much away. So
he recognizes
Stephen,
Lady Pole. Stephen does dancing, and
can't
she's
get
dancing.
to her.
No, he can't get to her, and she's stuck dancing with the gentleman with thistle-down hair. And this is what she's been suffering through. That's what he's been suffering through. Catfish, I think you're absolutely right. I think it is Falco who sings Rock Me Amadeus.
Winner!
This is oh my goodness gracious. So we end that scene as Lady Pole wakes up. We have another commercial break here in America.
There is one thing that's interesting about the commercials. Whenever you watch commercials, if you're careful, you can figure out who the show has told advertisers is going to be their viewing audience.
And so what commercials are they airing during this, Catfish?
Well, they're airing a lot of car commercials.
Ooh.
So that would be for, and they look like they're a little bit fancier cars. They're not the cheapo cars.
All right.
And so it's
this
more
is-
of an affluent audience. BBC America probably like that anyway.
Well, I don't know. Maybe Doctor Who's audience isn't so affluent. And maybe at that Atlantis, they keep advertising Atlantis. I think, though, that because this has all the trappings of a period piece, it is a period piece. Let's be honest. Maybe that's why you get those car commercials like Matthew McConaughey driving a Lincoln.
Oh, man.
Who is a better gentleman with thistle-down hair, Mark Warren, the actor, or Matthew McConaughey? One makes less sense, I'll tell you that.
Hey, I don't know. I just know it's a flat circle that goes around. All right.
We're back from commercial break, and we are with the family Strange.
How come we never talk about the commercial breaks for Game of Thrones?
We should. Right.
So we come back, and Strange is making some good points. He's like, this is the worst studying ever.
Right. Well, we never talk about the Raven King, who theoretically gave us magic.
Well, also, I feel like, that very first book he gave him, it's like the background in magic.
Yeah.
What's funny is the kind of books that he's giving him, I think, are the kind of books that the York Society of Magic would approve of.
Theoretical magic.
They're theoretical and history books rather than practical magic books.
Now, 2 important points of information come up in this scene, Catfish.
But before we do that, let's talk about why Strange is doing this. Is it because he really wants him to have a great background and he's excited for everyone to learn it? Or do you think he's trying to hold him back from doing practical magic?
I think it's the former. I think it's a 10-year program. Why not get all the history out of the way so you can kind of see everything that's been done.
Right.
And then we'll, it's like learn about everything that's been done, then slowly you'll learn how to do it. How about that?
No,
What do you think?
I agree with you. I don't think he's doing it maliciously. I think he feels to make magic respectable, you have to know everything about it before you can do it. So
everything about it except the Raven King and the fairies.
Yeah, he seems very anti-Raven King, and I don't know where he got that from.
Now, we've had people predict Catfish that, for example, Triple M predicted Childermas is the Raven King. I think because I just mentioned that Vinculus said that it was, his words, not mine, about the nameless king. And now we had the gentleman with thistle-down hair saying the exact same words about the nameless king.
Right.
Is it possible that the gentleman with thistle-down hair is the Raven King?
Now, from what Mr. Norrell said, is the Raven King was someone who was seduced by the fairies,
right,
and then went and joined the fairies, but did not sound like he was a fairy himself. And to me, it's clear that the man with the thistle-down hair is a fairy.
If you believe footnote, according to the footnotes in the book, the Raven King was as a infant. He was put out in the woods, kind of like to die, and the fairy saw him and brought him in.
Oh.
And then he kind of overtook the fairy kingdom, and he became the king. And then he came back from the fairy kingdom, came back to England, kind of let magic in England, and then once again, about 300 years ago, he disappeared into the fairy realm, took all his followers, and hasn't been seen since.
Well, there's a lot of foreshadowing here, and again, under pain of torture, to make a comparison to Game of Thrones.
Okay.
It feels like we're setting up a conflict between these two people, but the ultimate conflict is going to be with the Raven King.
Possibly, we shall see.
They could not be foreshadowing anymore. The Raven King. I'm going to give you a hint here.
He gets more name drops.
Spoiler alert: we're going to have the Raven King in this show.
You think that? All right.
How could we not have if we didn't have this Raven King in this show? I would start tearing things up. And since we record this in your place,
no.
I would be tearing things up in your place.
All right, I want to talk about two things that happen right here in this breakfast scene.
Okay.
Number one,
they're eating breakfast.
That is number one.
Okay, number two.
Number one, Arabella. She mentions that she's reading in the paper that this old man has passed on, and that his estate has magical books in his library that they'll probably try to get rid of.
Right.
And we later see Drawlight read that same article from the newspaper.
Yeah.
But really hidden in this scene is Jonathan Strange. He's talking about, I want to learn about the Raven King. And he is kind of not listening to his wife. He says, there's a myth that the Raven King wrote his own book. And what does that make you think about episode 1? What did Vinculus always say? He said he had a book by the Raven King. So, but it's really hidden in this scene, and you can't even dwell on it because there's the great joke about, what do you mean I don't notice the new maid? Hey, I'm still a man, ladies.
I know, right? It's so funny. He protests so much. He's like, wait, are you saying I'm no longer a heel? What's wrong with you?
And like I said, did she get what she wanted? She wanted him to have a job, but now he's changed. Maybe he's not.
I totally agree. Well, she's totally on his side. She wants to give him more magical books. I think she's thrilled with this.
Okay. So in Sir Walter Pole comes in. He's like,
by the way, who wouldn't want a guy who,
doesn't look at other ladies? Yeah.
Well, not just that, but remember one of the things that was claimed that magicians could do in episode 1, laundry.
That's why she pushed him into this career.
Yeah,
That's
she's
awesome.
like, laundry.
Get to work, right?
So then the first of, as you noted, 2 times.
Twice, yeah.
Norrell is not available.
No.
Conveniently not available. And I have to say, having been introduced and watched Mr. Norrell, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would be unavailable. I mean, what's he doing? He's not out partying.
He
right? Doesn't even go get his own books. He makes Childermas go out and do stuff.
Maybe he was taking a bath. I don't know. He's not available.
Well, the excuse for the first one was that he was
working on his beacons.
He was working on the beacons. The second one was odd.
He had a headache.
He had a headache, and then he shows up anyway.
He shows up a bit later. So, sure enough, Sir Walter Pole walks in. He's like, 2 French ships have snuck through the blockade.
Or 3.
A number of French ships. How about 1, 2, 3 French ships de Francois have snuck through the blockade. He's like, Mr. Strange, you have to come and help. And Lady Strange, she likes it. Arabella's like, oh, this is cool. My husband's getting asked.
She's all in.
And she's so all in, she comes with him.
Exactly.
Take your significant other to work, guys.
Well, she's like, she's excited. She wants to see if he's going to do some laundry.
No, I think she's excited. This is Sir Walter
And
Pole,
then-
famous politician, famous,
But what's nice about this show is, again, things get dropped in super quick. We
Yeah.
find out here right at the top of the scene
Yeah.
that it's so bad with Lady Pole that they've made the churches stop ringing the bells for the time in their neighborhood. Now, that is power, people.
That is hardcore. There's a funny bit here where Sir Walter offers Arabella seed cake, and Jonathan's like, no, she really dislikes seed cake. And this is a callback to where she said, you're going to get a nosebleed. And he's like, I'm not going to get a nosebleed in the stair-cross hall scene. And now he's like, she doesn't like cake. And she's like, she's been able to speak for herself since she was 3, you
I know.
cat.
No, but they've got a good, funny relationship, and clearly they know each other very well. I think that's what
They
they're
have a
trying to
very
indicate,
loving relationship.
They do.
Arabella has the freedom to just wander the house. She's left alive.
And Lady Pole is this the consumption couch?
This
or
is
is this a different one?
No,
this is the consumption couch.
She's laid out on the consumption couch.
man.
Arabella, okay, everybody, people don't like.
She's on the triple C, the claustrophobic consumption couch.
Now, everybody, maybe you don't like when I say foreshadowing too much, but Arabella walks in and she sees all these great paintings of Venice, Italy, foreshadowing, drink. And we have this talk here, and she says she always wants to visit there, but Lady Pole is like, you know what? How would you like it if you got lost in all these crazy streets and corridors of Venice, Italy? Yeah.
Now,
Footnote.
it's a little footnote here. For those of you who have been following Bubba and I for a while, Bubba and I actually went on a trip overseas.
Yeah,
and
couple.
we spent some time in Venice.
And we've been lost on Venice.
We've been lost in Venice. We've taken the wrong boats in Venice. In fact, one time we took a boat, and then
It was the last boat of the night.
It was
the last boat of the night.
took us out to some crazy island, and then brought us back to Venice.
Thank
and
God it brought us back to the main area.
But on the
because
way-
that's where the hotel was. We were going to be screwed there.
But on the way other side of Venice,
Yeah.
and Bubba got so upset with me,
Right.
that he said, "Screw you, I'm out of here."
Well, no, we had this. I said, let's have it a bet. Because, in Venice, when you're in Venice, there are all these signs that are like San Marco Plaza this way. They're trying
Right,
to point
that's
you
the
to-
thing. You
they're
have no idea where you're going.
Just look for
because
those signs.
It is
Oh, my God.
labyrinthine,
Oh.
but they have the signs. So you just keep following the signs, and eventually you'll get to San Marcos Square, or what was the other one? There was another place that
Yeah,
there was
there's-
another place they pointed to.
Well, we always had to cross that one wooden bridge near the church, near the
Yeah.
cathedral, and so
So we got lost.
we on the boat. We got lost. Then we had to walk through all these residential Venice neighborhoods in these crazy. It is confusing, man.
It is
now it's
really
an island
confusing.
and it's a relatively small. They're a bunch of islands and they're all relatively small, so it's not like you can get too lost.
Again, once you know you're away from San Marcos Square, you can follow those signs, and even though it's super turny
Well,
and twisty.
the other sign, one of the other signs, it's not the one I'm thinking of, but one of the other signs is always to the train depot.
The boat to the train depot. I can't remember.
No, there's a bridge you can walk over. To
Yeah,
the train.
yeah. I can't remember where the other, because I remember it was San Marcos and something else. So anyway, Bubba headed back to the hotel room, and
I got there first. I found my way back
You
first.
did. I went in my way to San Marcos Square and had some delicious drinks and met with some other tourists.
I
and
am
had a
so
blast.
jealous of this. I am so jealous. Oh, it was a bridesmaid party, right?
I think so. I don't know. We
God.
always seem to run in those when we go on vacation. Always the bridesmaids parties.
That's true. All right, so let's back to the show. Turn
Back to
this
the show.
footnote off, and we'll come back to the show here. And we find out Emma Pole finds out that Arabella's husband works with Mr. Norrell, and she does not like him at all.
Now, why do you think this is? How would she?
Because she says,
associated-
"I would be better dead than I am." Ouch.
Yeah, that's
she is
rough.
miserable. And it stays miserable because as Jonathan is locating these French ships that got past the blockade.
Well, imagine how confusing it would be if, like, you knew exactly what was going on and you couldn't tell anybody.
Oh.
Yeah, or not. Even worse than that.
Yeah.
You tell somebody, it comes out wrong,
It's
and they
gibberish.
look at you like you're crazy.
Oh, it'd be terrible, and you're not getting any sleep.
Yeah.
But I was saying it's so bad that Sir Walter Pole, he goes to Jonathan. He's like, "Does Mr. Norrell ever mention my wife?"
Well, first
and
let's-
Jonathan thinks he's like, "Oh no, he doesn't like to brag," and that was not where Mr. Pole was going at all.
Right. Well, but the interesting thing that happens here is, let's note this because later on it goes it's not said later.
Right.
It's misunderstood later. He does exactly find what he needs to find.
Yeah, he finds those ships,
in
and
a
he's
flash.
very helpful.
Yeah.
Even though he says, that's hasn't been part of my study yet. I found it.
Yeah.
And so anyway, but what I love is that I'm going to go back to the situation with Lady Pole, and it's become so bad, and Walter Pole is so desperate. He's like, he won't even talk to me about it. It's a closed subject. Help me. And he's like, what type of magic was it? Is there any way to undo it? When your husband, when he's like, the wife I love, is there any way we can undo this?
Well, because he feels the same thing for her. It's not like he wants to get rid of her. He just knows how much she's struggling.
Yeah.
I mean, there is one way to take care of this, right?
Yeah. That is, so what are you saying here, Catfish?
Well, I'm just saying she says she would be better off dead. I mean, it's not like...
He should take her to the House of Black and White. Game of Thrones.
Drink this. You'll be fine.
Now, Walter Pole asks Jonathan Strange, hey, can you inquire about this? But Jonathan never does for the rest of this episode. He never asks Mr. Norrell about what's going on.
No, he doesn't really confront. I mean, it's so hard to get anything out of Norrell. You can't. Right. You gotta save like any kind of favors for yourself.
And here's where I feel bad for what's happened to this manservant, Stephen Black. But here's where I begin to really kind of dislike him. He comes in and he must know what's happening. He knows what's happening to Lady Pole. And he doesn't say. Instead, he tells Mrs. Strange, Arabella, he's like, don't tell anybody about what she said. When she has guests, she goes on, she rambles this nonsense. And so
well,
please
but what is he? But I think he's protecting her. She just said gibberish. It's not that she's saying anything. She's saying anything wrong. I think he's trying to protect her reputation. That's not what you think? You think he's against her?
Well, the big thing is we don't know if he can say. Okay, we know that Lady Pole can't say.
I don't think he could say either.
Well, I don't think he can say either, but, I'd be nice to have him try to say something.
Okay.
Rather than him just, once again, paint her as a nobody. And I love this line where Lady Pole's like, Arabella, please come again. I see no one. Or rather, I see a room full of people and not a Christian amongst them.
Oof.
Ooh, man. Religious hate, Lady
Well,
Pole.
I know, right? That's the thing, the fairies? There's no fairies that are converted to Christianity?
That's not cool, Lady Pole. And so Arabella, she's really moved by this. And I just want to...
She's freaked out. What if you went to someone's house, were snooping around, you saw them, and they told you some crazy nut story? Hey, make sure to tell your friend this story.
So here's where we're getting to. We follow up that scene with Jonathan Strange back in Mr. Norrell's library. And Mr. Norrell's upset that Walter Pole went
Why did they make you do this? There's no way you could have figured it out. And what's great is Strange gives a little like,
and you didn't find the strips, did you?
Right, no, he's like, kind of like...
Yeah, he doesn't want to say.
Right, but he also, it could be like an embarrassed, well, I kind of did. That's the way I took it. That's not the way... that Mr. Norrell took
Mr. Norrell doesn't like it at all, and he's being frustrated by these sea beacons, which are going to protect the English shore. And of course, he's the one who pitched them. Back in his very first scene in the episode, he pitched them to Parliament.
Right.
But he's getting frustrated by them. He's like, Sir Walter Pole wants them to have bells on them. And of course, bells just keep coming up. What does Jonathan Strange call his wife? Her nickname is Belle.
It's Belle, yeah.
And so... I think it makes perfect sense to have bells. You can have these beacons that could cause trouble. You don't want your ships running into them. Put some damn bells on these beacons. But Mr. Norrell is really having a hard time doing this magic. Jonathan Strange says, is there a way I can assist you? How can I help you? And once again, Jonathan Strange is kind of hung up on fairies and the Raven.
The Raven King. Yeah, and again, this do as I say, not as I do.
Oh, yeah.
He's very clear they're not to be trifled with.
And there's this great thing, the infamous, not really a rhetorical question here, Catfish.
Oh, right.
Where Mr. Norrell's like, what magic have I ever done that needed assistance of a fairy? And Jonathan Strange is like...
Just straight up, I don't know.
That is pretty powerful. I actually liked it a lot.
Yeah.
And of course, Mr. Norrell has to suddenly be like, it was rhetorical. And then he lays it out. He says, once again, the Raven King abandoned us. Is that why he hates the Raven King? He's like, there used to be magic. This guy, he just rode out over 300 years ago and left us all high and dry.
But I would still be happy. I'd be like, all right, fine. What's the big deal? He took magic. Now magic is done again. I don't know.
But Mr. Norrell also says, he has an evil, his evil deeds. Maybe we've got to read these history books to find out about these evil deeds.
Right. Now, here's your boy shows up again, draw light, and then that's when they notice, okay, that this dude is dead, and there's going to be
a book sale.
Now,
but once again, look at this.
I don't understand.
Yeah, but hold on, Catfish.
Okay,
look at this. These guys are not in the library anymore. They've been regulated to this waiting chamber, this sitting chamber. And so, of course, they're going to be upset, LaSalle's and Draw Light. They are pissed off that they are no longer in the library. They're not in the inner circle. They're in the outer circle.
That's true, but I don't know what they think it's going to, what it's going to accomplish to hide this information from Norrell.
Well, Mr. LaSalle's, he's like, we'll wait. Just hold on to it.
Okay.
He's already coming up with a plan of how he's going to separate and drive a wedge between these two.
Oh, okay. So that's what you think that the plan is to drive a wedge so they can get back in the library instead of out there on those uncomfortable chairs.
Right. And folks, I want you to pull do me a solid and this week do a draw light. Pull a draw light. Go over to somebody's house. Don't talk to them. Just sit in a waiting chamber reading a newspaper.
But when they come out, you have to say their name.
Oh, yes. Oh, my good friend, yes.
Oh, Mr. Smith.
And now we're going to get to another one of my favorite. I have too many. This episode has too many good scenes.
And yet you only gave it an 8.
Well, I hate these commercial breaks. We're coming back from a commercial.
The commercial break's got nothing to do with it. Why would you give it an 8?
It just doesn't flow.
I think you should give it a 9.
Well, maybe at the end of this episode I will. So Jonathan Strange, he's sick of his teacher ignoring fairies, so he's going to try to summon one himself with the infamous lighting of a candle. And we see the candle flicker as if an imaginary wind blows.
Oh, and then we hear
the creer.
But he doesn't see anything. He's it's almost like he does, but then he's disappointed.
Right.
So that's a nice fake out for the audience. And so he's just like, whatevs, I guess it isn't working. And he sits down, and then revealed is the man with the thistle-down hair.
I love that.
All of a sudden, Stephen, who was going to take some drinks to someone in the living room, now finds himself somewhere totally different.
I love it. I love this scene so much. And the man with thistle-down hair, he is talking trash. He's like, this idiot attempted to summon me. Of course, he did summon you, but forget that part. He's like, he's just as stupid as the other one and nearly as ugly. And then as soon as he says this, and the fact that Jonathan looks him right in the eyes and says, what?
What?
And it freaks the gentleman with thistle-down hair out. He's like,
whoa.
Wait, that shouldn't be happening.
Yeah. Even though he can't see him, the fact that somehow he was able to sense him is still bad news for the man with the thistle-down hair. He calls her and he's like, oh my God, hilarious. Over there someone's saying someone's ugly and stupid. I think that's hilarious.
Right.
Wouldn't it be funny if somebody called you ugly and stupid?
Right. And Arabella's like, 2 old ladies live next door. They must really hate each other.
But the super problem is this.
Oh, no.
Let me tell you something. Again, this is why I call you the man with the thistle-down hair. Because she walks in, he's already smitten, but he's like over it. So now he's checking this girl out, and he is just super creeping on her.
He sees her, and his jaw doesn't drop, but I think his eyebrows raise up an inch. He is excited to see lovely Arabella.
This is what I like to call the Bubba.
He is totally stalking. And like with Bubba, the women don't notice me either. She didn't notice him.
Good point. She blew out the candle. And then the great moment we see, again.
We're in Portsmouth.
Again, when Mr. Norrell does his magic, he's got to recite it. It's not anything that comes from him. It's not like a music he hears, whatever.
He had to learn it.
He's got to recite it exactly. He's got to recite it exactly. He's got to focus. It takes a lot out of him.
Oh, yeah.
We saw he's like, whatever. And then he feels like, okay, because his magic is so boring, and this was my interpretation.
I have a different one, but go on.
Okay, great. But he's like, after he's done, he looks and he's like, okay, they're behind me, and so they know I'm here, so I have to do a little flourish so that, because that's what they expect. They expect a little flourish with magic, and so then he turns around and he's done. So what's your interpretation?
I interpreted it as maybe he doesn't know what he's doing. Maybe he's like, is this it? Let's try this.
Okay,
work?
I think you're totally wrong.
I
think he knows exactly what he's doing.
I don't think there is doubt in his eyes, in his performance, is what I'll say. I want to get everybody get ready. There's going to be a footnote Sir Walter Pole is talking to Arabella, and he's talking about how tough the realm is, the kingdom of England is, and how difficult it's been. And he mentions that the king has gone mad. Catfish, do you know which king he's referring to?
Mad King George?
Mad King George III. That's absolutely right. In fact, Sir Walter Pole says the only thing that's going good in the realm and in the kingdom is magic.
Yeah, well, that is sad. We did not see King George, but again, we see magical.
Yeah, but look at Jonathan Strange's face at this. He's a bit questioning, like, what's going on here? He's like, I hope you know what you're doing. Don't you? I mean, look at that face he just gave.
Yeah, I think he's suspicious too, but, what? Yeah, what does he get? Oh, but then there's
Here we go.
Hup, hip, hip, huzzah!
Draw light. Nobody is impressed because they can't see anything. But draw light, he's going to get it up. Hip, hip, huzzah. And when everybody else, there's a smattering of applause. This is a smattering of hip, hip, huzzahs.
Yeah, okay, so Strange is skeptical, but he's not going to sense anything out there, I don't think. I really believe he did it.
Okay, all right. Well, here we're going to have my second nominee for Magician of the Week, Catfish.
Oh, and who's that?
That is Henry Lascelles, Drawlight's good partner. Here he is. He goes, ooh, I believe Strange and Sir Walter accord very well together. They are men of similar temperament. That is his first step. This is a spell called How to Separate Two Friends Who Might Get Jealous of Each Other. And so, Mr. Lascelles, my second nominee for Magician of the Week.
Very good. Okay, so then there's another knocking, perhaps a bell. And again, unavailable. It seems to me at this point it would be strange, no pun intended, for Norrell to allow them to call Strange for something. So I can't imagine. Maybe he assumed that the other thing didn't work. Right. Even though it did, and so they would wait until Norrell was ready, and that's why maybe he showed up, or maybe he was told, hey, Strange is out there taking care of business.
Well, how about this? Jonathan Strange, in the first chapter, the first episode, he gets woken up the day he's hungover that his father has passed, and this look, he cracks open the door, and he just has a look of somebody, ugh. He has the exact same look here. Look at his face there. Jonathan Strange is not a morning person. He is pretty miserable.
And the guy he's waking up for throughout this scene,
and the next
scene,
he's a blowhard light.
He is pomposity personified, pretty much.
Yeah, I like him too. Good, you like him. That's good. And
he's no draw light.
He's no draw light. He's no Dr. Foxcastle, but Jonathan Strange is like, what's going on? And they go, well, we think that it had to do with these beacons that Norrell put out there. It caused this ship to run aground on a shoal called Horse Sand. And, everybody's like, well, maybe it could right itself if there was a good breeze. And he's like, I can do a breeze. And Blowhard's like, what are you going to do? No, you can't do that. They'll all drown, like anything that's proposed.
Anything. No, what are you thinking? Blah, 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 blah. Now, to be honest with you, and again, I've seen this scene twice.
Yeah.
I still don't understand what he did that was better than the other options that were worse. Because if he built the sand up underneath it, it would still be breached on the sand.
Yeah, you would think.
I'm not quite sure. And there was like sand on the deck. I don't know how putting sand on the deck would help. The only thing that would have helped would have been slowly removing sand from underneath the ship, but that's not what happened.
Happens. Well, it doesn't appear to happen. That's
anyway, whatever happened was magical.
This scene once again on the big screen was awesome. Jonathan Strange, he's not a morning person.
I think it's pretty strange.
He's woke up. Yeah. He's not in a good mood, and this is magic from anger can be awesome.
I think it's awesome too because again, he's like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do. But then, boom, he's a very tactile magician.
I want to point out there's an important part of this brilliant spectacle is about, once again, how he can't control it. There are people walking along the coast, and they have to run for the hills. He doesn't even care about them. He's like, these people start running like, what the
Run for your lives!
I know.
Run for your lives!
I was saying on this anniversary of Jaws, instead of get out of the water, it's like, get in the water. There's these friggin' horses charging at us. And this is a special effects wonder.
Right, and then what's cool is it's like it's so real that the sand gets on the camera lens.
Yeah.
That was kind of cool.
Mr. Norrell, Drawlight, and LaSalle's all show
so the
up.
horses hop over, and then they get in. It's not clear to me what happened, but then he like pulls some sand up. Maybe he's pulling sand up from underneath. I don't get it.
Yeah,
maybe
it could be. Did you see how that smoke of sand disappeared?
Yeah,
from
maybe the horses like trump the sand out from underneath it. Let's just say that's what happened.
And
Let's
hold
pretend we're the
on, let me
professionals.
say, after this spell, is it possible that Jonathan Strange is arrogance? He's, the stick in the mud. He's like, what did you do? He goes, yeah, they were horses. I made them out of horse sand. Marmalade and rolls, anybody?
Well,
later, losers.
Well, considering all the horse shit,
Hey,
again,
now.
no pun intended,
Okay.
that Captain Blowhard gave him, I mean, I would do the same thing. How's that? Good enough for you?
Okay, and then Mr. Norrell, the look on his face.
Or Norrell.
Dang it, Drake. The look on his face when he saw that was like, oh, trouble.
Right,
Oh,
and
trouble.
even the other guys noticed. They're like, Norrell isn't going to be happy, and then he say, well, he never is. Good point.
Right. Well, the Lord Liverpool and Sir Walter Pole want to bring Jonathan Strange to the peninsula to help with the war. And, of course, our boy, Drawlight, and LaSalle's are like, where's that newspaper? This is the time to separate these two magicians.
Right, I guess that's what's going on. But they
don't explain it. They don't explain it.
It would seem to be that there's already some, some discord between them. I guess that's when they decide to do it. Well, they do definitely set that up by saying, Strange could get the books unless you're careful.
Now, Mr. Norrell, he doesn't want to send Strange to Portugal to fight these Napoleon wars. He's like, enough. In Jonathan Strange,
he's treating Strange like a child.
Yeah, but Strange kind of likes it. He's like, think of what great respect this could create for magicians. And Norrell, once again, he says it's reckless. It'll bring back that evil Raven King if we do something crazy like this. And so he's against it. He's like, I will never be for it until cut to the next scene. He suddenly sees a reason why he might be for it. So finally, Drawlight and LaSalle's are back in the library, Catfish.
Oh, smart notice here. They get let back in. Childermass. He's
Childermass is so many characters throughout history have had the wise ass manservant.
They should call him Chilling Mass because whenever I see him, he's just chilling.
Right, but he's just great. He gets to wisecrack. He is the wisecracking housekeeper. You've seen it on so many shows, too many to mention. It is just great. But LaSalle's and Drawlight, they pull their plan to separate them. They mention these books being for sale, and of course you would get them. And nobody else could get them. Well, except Strange. And I love how in unison, Mr. Norrell's like, well, how do you think this is going to be sold? Do you think it'll be sold privately to me or to an auction? And they both together, auction. And, of course, it comes to pass. That is the final scene they're setting up. And it's this, let me see if I can say this tongue twister. The seeds of doubt that they sowed have been sowed.
I'm so glad that we waited for that. That was powerful.
Powerful? Am I your nominee for Magician of the Week, Catfish?
No, but I am your John the Baptist, sir.
Very good. So sure enough, Norrell, a second ago, he said he'd never be for it. Now he has to break the news to Jonathan Strange. Hey, I'm for it. But Jonathan Strange he's got one up his sleeve, doesn't he?
Smart, very smart.
He's like,
he's very fast.
Oh, he's like, well, if I'm going to have to go, I might need to take some books with me. And Norrell is not take too kindly to people asking for his books. Huh?
He does not. And what is funny is, I guess we have gotten. The funny thing is, it seems to me that from the books,
right?
It's not that Strange gets. It's not he reads how to do a magic trick and then he can do it.
Right.
What the books give him is an idea of what he can do.
Right.
He doesn't need to read how to do it.
No.
He just needs to read what has been done, and it gives him an idea.
And
then there's some funny business
so
here about how many books they need to go. What are we going to do? We're going to build.
Could you build an iron box, please?
No. How about saddlebags?
Childermass, shut up. And Childermass has a great line. He goes, "I believe Mr. Strange will do very well in the war, sir. He's already outmaneuvered you."
and then there's a lot of grumbling by Norrell. I wish I never did this. I wish I never did that. This is all my fault. You made me come out here.
Right, I wish I'd stayed in my library, then I would have all my books.
Yeah, it's better to have all my books than to have magic out in the world.
Yeah, but to me, it's tough to go from these light comedy scenes of, oh, I'm losing all my books, to then suddenly go back to something that's not light at all. That is Lady Pole. Because her situation is not light and funny. It is
escalated.
Tragic. She just slapped her husband. She's getting locked in this damn room again.
I can't imagine that it could go on for much longer. The situation.
And Sir Walter Pole, he's in terrible shape too. I think it's terrible to lock your wife in a room, but he's just so frustrated with everything. He takes it out on Stephen that all the help have left but Stephen. There's nobody there.
No, but let's be clear about this.
Yeah.
He takes it out on Stephen because Stephen hasn't hired any new help. It's okay if the help leaves, but, bro, we need some more people in here. He doesn't bring any more.
Lady Pole is yelling.
The same kind
Lady
of
Pole
problems.
is yelling that she's lost. Suddenly Stephen hears the bell again, and he has a look like, oh, fuck.
Mm-hmm.
We say goodbye to the happy, loving couple. This is you don't see, maybe because we watch Game of Thrones, we don't see many loving, happy couples.
Well, you mean that aren't related.
Right. Good point. But this is a bit sad where finally Lady Strange, Arabella, she finally tells Jonathan about these crazy tales that Emma Pole has told her. And Jonathan, he's
like, yeah, she's a little...
She's a little lost in the head, but come on, Jonathan, doesn't this remind you of when Sir Walter Bell was saying, hey, there's something up? Arabella earlier in the episode was like, remember when you looked in the mirror to see your enemy?
I know, but you can't. I mean, at this point, he thinks,
right,
and he may be wrong, but he thinks there's no way he can match up with Norrell. He doesn't want to go against Norrell. Why would he go against Norrell? Norrell's, even though he wanted, he wasn't maliciously trying to get the books from Norrell. Right. He just realized that, you're trying to train me, and yet, you don't trust me with these books. He wanted the books. He wants to learn.
Yeah, they're not officially enemies yet. But does this last scene set them up as enemies? When Mr. Norrell sees Arabella at this book auction, he is not happy at all. It's like all his worst fears have come to light.
Right, he's like, wait, I got him out of here, I lost the 40 books, and I still got a chance to lose this?
Right, the Duke of Roxbury, his books are being auctioned off, and Arabella...
I'm surprised we didn't have to wait through some... porcelain ducks.
The first item on the menu is this silver spoon.
Yes.
It was this family spoon.
Yes, exactly. A painting by his grandmother entitled Swans at the Lake.
So, Catfish, there are a lot of guineas being bid on these books.
We have no idea
how much is a guinea worth, Catfish?
I don't know. All we know is we start with 200 and we end with quite a bit more than 200.
Yeah, I think it's all said and done 2,000 guinea. That sounds like a lot. But, of course, I really don't know. And this is the scene, to me, this is a powerful scene.
So good.
When he looks over and makes eye contact with the gentleman, and that is trouble. He almost loses the books because of it. He's so like, oh.
He does, but he rallies himself to say, I'm going to end this right now.
Right.
2,000 guineas, and Belle's like, we don't got that.
Yeah, I know. And it is tragic. And she actually does tear up, and that's what the gentleman offers his handkerchief to. But the fact that she can see him, and she says no thank you. Oh,
that's the scary thing, is that you just assume he's not seen, and he holds out the handkerchief, and she's like, no, and then I'm like, whoa.
Yeah,
and he looks over at
but as he's
Norrell,
doing
it,
like, he's talking to Arabella, but he's still kind of staring down. This is the eye contact scare with Mr. Norrell, and he gives him the eye as he's walking out of the auction. Ay. And so for the second episode in a row, we end an episode on Mr. Norrell thinking, we're screwed. What have I done?
To refer another great HBO show.
Yeah.
The Wire.
Yeah.
The guy who wrote that, Simon.
Yeah, David Simon.
He originally started as a Baltimore reporter and reporter on the police beat.
Yeah.
And he had a great show before that based off a great book.
Corner.
Before that, even that was
really?
Homicide.
Oh, right.
He followed the year of the Homicide Department. And I remember always one thing they talked about is a great thing that they enjoy is once they have the perp in cuffs and he walks by and they look at each other and they call that eye fucking. So basically that's what happens here.
The gentleman with thistle-down hair.
He gives him a little eye fucking.
Ouch.
And it's not for sexual intercourse. It's the fuck you. I'm giving you that look. You're done.
Well, I want to get to it, Catfish. Once again, these 2 episodes. The first episode ends where he brings Lady Pole back to life, and we focus on Mr. Norrell as he's in his carriage. And you can kind of see that he's thinking, oh, good grief,
yeah,
what if I don't? Right. And then this episode, too, he's suddenly at this book auction, and he sees the gentleman following Arabella out, and he's like, not good. So,
can you make some, just based on this show, I mean, again, I've already admitted that, again, we covered this before. I read a lot of books. I read them super fast. So my retention is not great. I enjoy them at the time, but, it's not until I read things a few times that it sticks with me. Do you remember, do you not remember enough of this to do some spoiler-free speculation about what's coming up?
Sadly, I remember the big points well enough.
Okay.
I don't remember like the finer details. And if we get things wrong, please tweet at us and correct us when I'm saying, well, I think it's this or I think it's that. But the finer details, like most of these individual scenes, I remember, him bringing her back from life.
Right.
But I didn't remember this horse sand scene at all from the books. And it was the best scene in this episode. I think the best scene of the 2 episodes so far.
It was probably just in a footnote then. Because as I said, only the good scenes, good stuff were in the footnotes.
But I remember, obviously, Jonathan Strange being sent to the war. I definitely remember that.
Okay. So I'm just going to speculate a little bit because I forget. So here's the setup here. We've got Lady Pole. To me, I don't think this situation is untenable to continue. Also, it seems to me that also the man with the thistle-down hair is ready to move on from Lady Pole.
It's not you, it's me.
Yeah. And so it'll be interesting to see. I'm interested. I feel like the Lady Pole storyline is coming to a conclusion soon. I don't think that it's going to. I don't think it's going to draw out until the end. So I'll be curious to see how that ends. And then we've got
Stephen. What about what's going to happen with Stephen? He's pretty much screwed, right?
Stephen is totally screwed. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that they're both screwed. So who knows what's going to happen with Master Pole?
Well, what about Arabella though? Now that the gentleman is obviously hot for her, is she screwed? Is this like, oh damn, oh hell?
Well, I don't know how much power he really has. He's out in the world now.
Oh, yeah.
But
he's in our world.
He's in our world. But I don't know how much power he has in our world. And let's remember, Strange is removed, but presumably he's going to become more powerful with his magic as he goes on. So I imagine it's going to be... it sounds to me like Norrell started it and Strange is going to have to finish it.
Oh, that's a good call. Are they officially enemies yet? We know that theoretically they're going to be enemies. It's what will be the thing that officially makes them enemies? Would you guess?
It's funny. I don't know what it is yet because I don't feel like just kind of jealousy is going to do it. Perhaps Strange gets more when the more strong he gets in his magic, the more he becomes kind of righteous. But maybe
arrogant.
Right. But maybe it is going to come down to whatever's going on with the man with the thistle-down hair. If Strange found that out,
oh yeah, he would not be happy.
He'd be pissed. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So listeners, please tweet at us. Let us know what you think. Let us know how you feel. Catfish, how can everybody find you on Twitter?
Well, they can reach me at CJGman67.
Yep.
That's your 67th favorite CJG man.
And you can reach me. My name's Bubba. You can reach me on Twitter at FittenTrim. That's FITTENTRIM at FittenTrim on Twitter.
And before we go, we always have to do the thing we always do.
It's our time
for the Magician of the Week. Okay, so you gave us a couple of nominees.
I gave you 2 nominees this week, Catfish.
The buddies, the bros.
The bros, the entourage, and I've held off too long. Even though I loved Dr. Foxcastle and I miss him so much, and I think we lost Papa Strange too early, it is time for me to bow down to the magnificence. That is, my magician of the week is Mr. Drawlight. Oh, the way he was able to, he was not in the room, but he was able to see and hear into the room.
Yeah.
It was the most magical
Amazing.
thing. Anybody could make sand horses. He saw into a locked room. I loved it.
And the way that he was so surreptitious, no one noticed him doing it.
Nobody of importance.
Okay, I have a co-magicians of the week.
Ooh.
Yes, and that is Bumpkin number 1 and Bumpkin number 2.
Yeah.
They have disappeared from the show.
Hey, now.
One of them is going to help.
He's out there with the chickens.
And I can't remember what the other one is doing.
If you've seen Angel Heart, they use chickens in that magic. Maybe he's...
Wow. That's the last thing I expected was an Angel Heart reference. Although similarities.
There are.
The devil.
Yeah, don't make a deal with the devil.
Yeah, exactly.
So are those your only nominees, Catfish?
No, those are my co-winners.
Oh, your co-winners.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
okay.
they disappeared themselves from the poll residence. They real quick like.
Yeah. So please, folks, give us iTunes reviews. Please contact us on Twitter. We want to hear more from you, your thoughts on how this great adaptation is going. We know we had a long episode this week, but it's a fun episode. We want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so far,
and what's exciting for me is next week is going to be the first episode that I haven't seen yet.
Right. Well, we went to that special screening a week before it aired in the United States where we saw these two. And so now we've got 5 more, Catfish.
5 more.
5 more to wrap up this story and hopefully see it through to an incredible conclusion.
A magical ending.
And everyone, please, not only write to us, but we need you to help us promote this show. We know there are a lot of people who love this great miniseries, love this great books. Please help us spread the word. Go to chat rooms, tell your friends, tweet it out on Twitter, anything to help us drive. And once we get some of these BBC America prizes, we promise.
Go to Pod Tinder and swipe right.
We promise we are going to give it away to one of you loyal listeners who write and tweet.
If there's any way we can get any
iTunes
kind of
review.
swag,
Yeah,
we'll be
please.
sending it out.
All right.
I don't know where we can get swag unless BBC or BBC America helps us out.
right.
But we're going to send out
We'll
some kind of
find
swag. Something magical.
That's for sure. Folks, you subscribe to us on the podcast, and you will find us next week in Lost Hope.